Hello and welcome back to another video for Final Fantasy XIV with me, Meoni. Today we're looking at yet again another interview, this time on the German publication JPGames. As you can see, the banner is in German here. We're using Google Translate, which is not the best thing ever, but there's some really interesting bits from this one, so obviously full rights reserved for JPGames. A link in the description will take you to their website, and of course a link to this article. So basically, we've got ourselves a bit of a talk about the characters, the sort of evolution of characters and frustrations. So let's go through this. So it says, Wouk is a central character in Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail and is a hot topic in the community. There is a lot of backlash against this character, unpleasant criticism of her voice, but also serious fan criticism of her story and implementation in general. We met Naoki Yoshida at Gamescom 2024 and asked him what the feedback he and the team receive, how to filter it, and what the idea behind the design of Wouk is, for which the player acts as a kind of mentor. And Naoki Yoshida took a lot of time to answer these questions. So obviously this is going to be talking more specific with characters. Before Naoki Yoshida goes into the topic in detail, he makes the following request to fans. I would really like to ask that people do not make personal attacks against the voice actors involved in development, and also individual members of the localization team, because they are really doing their best to create something that is great for the creative process, end quote. And yeah, they're right, absolutely right. I don't know why anybody would direct personal attacks towards any person working on voice acting or localization. At the end of the day, it's not their fault what they read off of a script, okay? So if you don't like the storyline and you don't like certain characters, remember that the script is given to them, and, well, we'll leave it at that. He says, he rejects the accusation that individuals are trying to push an agenda. Quote, it's really not the case that they're trying to push a stance on a particular movement or anything like that. Naoki Yoshida obviously sees the mixed opinions about the fact that the player as the hero of the story is pushed to the background because of Wouk as serious criticism. Yoshida says, as far as the story of 7.0 is concerned, it's not the case that Wouk is the heroine of the story. The real hero remains the Warrior of Light, the character in the game. Interesting. So the idea behind Wouk. Naoki Yoshida says that the idea behind Wouk, but if we're going to follow the hero for the long term, we need to find different perspectives to look at them from. That was also the basis we had when we approached the story for 7.0. Before that, in 6.0, we had faced this threat that threatened the entire universe and we overcame it. If we are to take that approach again and install a new threat of this magnitude, people would rightly ask, so what about 6.0? For this reason, we looked at our hero, the Warrior of Light, and our motto was that this time, they should be a kind of supporter in the sense that they would experience this adventure and see a world that was completely new to them. Yoshida also explains the decision to create the character of Wouk. Quote, we designed Wouk to be young and somewhat inexperienced, but aiming to become a ruler, and we wanted to show her development in the story. That was the background we had for developing the character. Yoshida believes it is normal that criticism of Wouk comes to the fore. At the same time, however, there are also many players who like her as a character. Quote, I think there are 2 points that players find offensive. When Wouk first appears in the story, she already has a negative background. This is negative in the sense that she had a complex about being compared to her siblings. Likewise, she had an inferiority complex with regard to her own abilities. He continued, if we look at the other characters in Final Fantasy XIV, Alphino for example, he had his self-confidence, but he lost it due to a major blow of fate. But then he manages to make a comeback. I think the players like him a lot because he went through this experience as a character, but unfortunately Wouk already has a negative starting point, and I think that's probably the point that could be frustrating the players. I think that in respect, the way her character is designed is very Japanese. On the other hand, in Dawntrail, we go to Tural, a land we've never been to before. It's a completely new area, so we want to represent new cultures, new races, new peoples. That's why we have to really be attentive and careful when introducing a world, a fact that slows down the pace quite a bit in the first half, said Yoshi. He says, Perhaps this, combined with Wukelamat's character, was the trigger for negative reaction from players, the director and producer speculates. However, this is something we need to improve, so we'll take this feedback into account and make the best use of it in future development, end quote. So yeah, I think most people have a problem with the way that our characters looked upon in relation to Wukelamat and other characters, right? We're not at the forefront. It's kind of like a mentorship storyline. At least from what I gathered. I personally didn't have that much of an issue with it. I just thought it was a little bit unusual that this is the first time in a very long time that we've not been the main focus, you know, since probably A Realm Reborn, when we were just a small-time adventurer before we became a warrior of light, so to speak. So in many ways, it's also a recycle of that, isn't it? I think. And then obviously at the bottom we have some better English translation here as well. But essentially, it's the same thing. The idea that the character has gone through that process. It's an interesting piece, quite honestly. It's interesting that people have sort of tried to attach agendas to characters, you know, within the storyline. I still think at the end of the day, personally, that this is something that is more down to the person playing the game and what they get from it, right? You know, your own interpretations of things. I do think there is certainly a problem with the storyline in terms of its pacing for the first half, but that's something that we almost expected to happen with a reboot of, you know, essentially the entire game, which is what's happening with Dawntrail. It's the start of a new 10-year saga. Now, did they learn from this? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in future patches. And we've already looked in other interviews where Yoshi P has talked about the idea that there are many characters such as the Scions that aren't seeing enough, you know, enough love from a lot of people's perspectives. So yeah, I think it is very unfair to do personal attacks on people who work on the video game, though. That's kind of bang out of order in my personal opinion. That's got nothing to do with the storyline. Mixing up one agenda that you might have with somebody does not mean that it has something to do with the storyline. If a script is given to you as a voice actor, you're going to read it, right? It's based on the direction you're given, what kind of feelings that character's going through. Maybe the conveyance of that was perhaps not provided as much as it usually is for characters. I'm not sure. Without being a fly on the wall in a recording studio, I wouldn't know, but what Senna Breyer had to go through. But yeah, specifically, I think people have got problems more realistically with the character being the forefront, and they feel unusual about their character not being the center of attention. But you can only build up a storyline so much, right, where you are the main focus until you need a bit of a break from that. It's the same thing as I would say with Metal Gear Solid 2. I know it's a bit of a reference here, but when MGS2 came out, nobody expected Raiden to be the main character, right? You even had the demo, I think it was at the Tokyo Game Show, that showed a scene in the tanker section with Snake, and you played as Snake throughout that section, so people natively thought that they were going to get another adventure with Solid Snake. And then you reach the end of that prologue, and suddenly you're in the shoes of someone else, and you're looking at Snake as a third party, the perspective towards that character. And Hideo Kojima's idea behind that, if the interviews are to be believed for that game, is the idea that he wanted to build the Snake character as somebody cool, and you would respect them and you want to be them, but make you not be them, if that makes sense. See how things look from other people's perspectives. And I think for the most part MGS2 has got the same kind of experience in terms of player feedback, but people grew to admire that. So what they have to do in Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail with the patch content is to try to bridge that gap, maybe make use of the characters on screen and sort of accentuate some of the storylines and reasons for characters to be around, and for what your reason is to be around. So it'll be interesting to see what big bad they concoct for the future patches, but I'm excited by it. But yeah, I share some of the experiences with the feeling like I was taken away from the storyline myself. But it's interesting to see from Yoshi P that, you know, with that feedback taken on board, they're not dwelling too much on the, you know, vocal minority who are just for some reason against some specific voice actor for some reason. But yeah, that should never come into even question. Anyway, let me know what you think about this, what you think about this interview, and if you agree with Yoshi P or not, and what you're hoping for in the future of Dawntrail. Much love, link in the description. Go give it some love, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.